The noise at airport arrivals in Austria sounded far too large for a hallway. Philippine flags were already in the air. Cameras were raised 2 and 3 rows deep, and 20-year-old Alexa stepped into it all days before her April 6 debut at a WTA 500 on clay in Linz. This was not the welcome reserved for a player hoping to introduce herself. This was the welcome given to a star whose name had reached the building before she did. The cheers were the spectacle. What they revealed about Eala's place in world tennis mattered even more. If you want to be part of the group that tracks this story before the rest of tennis starts speaking about it in hindsight, subscribe and stay close to this channel. 72 hours earlier, the last image many fans carried was brutal. A 0-6 hit, a 2-6 loss to Carolina Mucha in the Miami round of 16 on March 23. Even so, Miami still pushed Eala into Austria as the world number 29 and one of the biggest names in this Linz field. She left Florida disappointed, proud of the week, and ready to open her clay season. When the Linz arrival video started spreading on March 25 and 26, the story stopped being about how Miami ended and became about what Europe was about to receive. There is no villain here, only the oldest test in tennis, a new surface, a fresh draw, and the question of whether momentum survives contact with uncertainty. Linz is her first ever WTA 500 event on clay. And not just any clay, it is indoor clay. The brand new identity of a tournament that had lived on indoor hardcourt since 1987. So if someone looked at the recent scorelines against Linda Noskova in Indian Wells 26-0-6 and against Mucha in Miami 0-6-26 and wondered whether this shift had arrived a little too soon, that reaction was understandable. Those were hard defeats. Those were real scars. But that is exactly why the airport mattered. Those scenes in Austria did not look like a player arriving under pressure. They looked like a player arriving with armor, carried by belief, protected by expectation, and pushed into a different category entirely. The debate is no longer whether Eala belongs in these spaces. The debate is what happens when that energy follows her onto an indoor clay court. Start with what the cameras caught. Multiple fan and media videos from March 25 and 26 show Eala moving through airport arrivals in Austria as Filipino supporters wave flags, shout her name, and press forward for a glimpse. You could read the hierarchy of the moment instantly. This was not polite recognition. This was emotional possession. She had not played a point in Linz, yet the atmosphere said the tournament had already been touched by her presence. That matters because tennis stardom is usually measured after the handshake, after the upset, after the trophy photos. Eala drew that current before the draw was even released. If you have been sensing that her rise was becoming something bigger than ranking updates and scoreboards, Linz just gave you the visual proof. And the stage waiting for her is not ordinary. The Upper Austria Ladies Linz Open runs from April 6 to 12 at the Design Center Linz, and 2026 marks the first indoor clay edition in tournament history. Eala enters that setting as one of the highest-ranked names in a 28-player field with a draw expected around April 3. A new surface for the event, a first WTA of 500 clay stop for her. The timing turns a simple arrival into an opening scene. Put yourself in the position of the rest of the field. You are preparing for the first clay version of a lawn gunning tournament. And one of the central stories before practice sessions even settle is the 20-year-old from the Philippines walking into Austria through a wall of flags that changes the temperature. It tells every opponent that this is not a quiet transition week. The speed of the shift is what gives it force. March 19, she survives Laura Siegemund in 3 sets 6-7-6, 6-3, 6-3. March 21, she beats Magda Linette 63-762. March 23, Mucha stops the run with a scoreline harsh enough to shake anyone. Then almost immediately, Eala looked at that week and said, "Vice, but I'm still really happy about this week." Of course leaving the court today a little disappointed, which is normal, but overall very happy of my performance this week. That quote does real work. It shows a player refusing to turn one bad afternoon into a verdict on her form. Miami left bruises, yes, but it did not steal direction. By the time the Austria footage flooded social media, the emotional story had already flipped from setback to reset. She reinforced that herself. In the aftermath of Miami, Eala said, "I can confirm Miami is still the best. I'll always have a special place in my heart for this tournament. First sunshine, double done." That is not the language of a player shrinking from the next challenge. It is the language of someone filing a painful loss away, keeping the gains and moving forward without apology. And that is the pattern that matters. Strong weeks in Dubai and Abu Dhabi. A breakthrough stretch in Indian Wells. A round of 16 run in Miami. Now a fast pivot into Linz. Different cities, different conditions, different demands, same upward pull. This is not random heat. This is a career learning how to hold altitude. Which brings the story back to the airport because that was not background noise. That was the emotional climax of everything she had built over the opening months of 2026. Fans did not travel, wait, and wave flags in Austria because of one ranking graphic. They did it because Eala has become a living symbol of possibility for people who see themselves in her, cheer in her language, and recognize the seriousness of what is unfolding. Scarcity gives that scene its weight. Tennis produces good weeks all the time. It does not often produce this kind of pull where a player crosses borders and the welcome feels closer to a homecoming than an arrival. The crowd in Linz airport answered the question before the clay season began. Eala is no longer simply entering tournaments. She is entering them as an event. Now place that beside the voice that knows her work better than almost anyone. Joan Bosch is not a studio analyst chasing a headline. He is Eala's traveling coach, the coach who has overseen her development through this rise, and a veteran teacher of elite habits whose job is to measure growth without sentiment. His standard for progress is blunt. We cannot stay in the same level. That line lands harder in Linz than it ever could in a training session. Indoor clay demands adjustment. A first WT of 500 clay appearance demands nerve. Bosch's message strips away the glamour of the airport videos and replaces it with the engine underneath them. The welcome was glamorous. The philosophy is ruthless. Keep moving or get past. Eala's Austria chapter makes sense because the people around her have been building exactly this kind of next step. The significance of Linz starts with one image. Filipino flags in an Austrian airport for a women's tennis player who had not even started the tournament yet. That is the globalization of the sport in plain sight. A 20-year-old from the Philippines is carrying audience energy across continents, and that changes how this clay swing will be watched. The immediate checkpoints are clear. The draw around April 3rd will tell us what kind of first test waits for her. April 6th begins the actual Linz campaign on the tournament's new indoor clay. And beyond that, the European road bends toward bigger clay stages from Madrid to Roland Garros, where confidence earned in 1 week can reshape an entire season. Here is the defensible prediction. If EA gets traction in Linz, even one composed opening win, the entire conversation around her clay season changes immediately. No one will frame her as a hard-court story wandering onto dirt. They will frame her as a rising seed with enough belief behind her to make any section of a draw uncomfortable. That is how quickly perception moves once the results and the aura start feeding each other. Still, credibility requires looking straight at the bruise. March 23rd against Much was rough. 0-6-2 to 6, the kind of scoreline that can make a breakthrough week feel fragile. Eala never hid from that disappointment. She admitted leaving the court hurt, then chose to hold on to the larger truth of the tournament instead of collapsing into the smallest truth of the last match. Her next actions mattered more than any slogan could. She rested. She reset. Then she confirmed Austria and pointed her season toward clay. That is what the audience in Linz was really greeting. Not perfection, but a player who can absorb a hard landing and still walk into the next city with her head clear. An airport in Austria. Flags from home. A Miami run that ended painfully but expanded her presence anyway. A coach who demands growth. A tournament reinventing itself on indoor clay at the exact moment Eala arrives to test a new version of her game. That is the verdict. Linz was not a side trip between hard courts and bigger European events. It was a coronation scene disguised as travel footage. Eala reached Austria carrying more than luggage. She carried proof that her name now moves people before a ball is struck. And for the fans who recognized that power before the headlines fully caught up, this week delivered something precious. Confirmation in real time. You were not reacting to hype. You were reading the signs correctly while they were still forming. So when the Linz draws on April 3rd, what matters more in your eyes, the first opponent across the net or the momentum she carried through that airport hallway? And if she opens the tournament with a win, Does that make Lind the moment her clay season stops being a question and starts being a warning? If you want to be part of the group that tracks this story before the rest of tennis starts speaking about it in hindsight, subscribe and stay close to this channel. The people in Austria waving those flags understood what moment they were standing inside. This community does, too. And the next time Eala walks into a new city, you will already know why the room feels different.